Hey, thanks for checking out the show. We're doing something a little different in this episode. We're going to do Korean barbecue bulgogi. It's a marinated beef dish. And we're also going to do kimchi, but we're going to do it untraditional. We're not doing it in a long-term pickled marinade that it usually takes to do. We're going to actually make a salad out of it. All right, so we're going to get right into the kimchi salad, and what we're doing with the kimchi salad is we've got Napa cabbage here, and we're going to add about a quarter of that head of cabbage. And really, what Napa cabbage is it's an Asian style cabbage. It's a very leafy cabbage, and it's used primarily in that Korean kimchi. You can also use cucumbers in that, by the way. But what we did was we diced it up into about 1-inch dices, and we're actually going to make a salad out of it instead of letting the traditional way of making kimchi, which would be to let it pickle and let it marinate over a long period of time, like 5 or 6 hours. But I'll tell you something, after we're done with this, you take whatever leftovers you have and you put them in a Ziploc bag, a sealable bag, and put it in your fridge. Oh man, that salad tomorrow is going to be out of control because that cabbage is going to keep breaking down from all the flavors that we're about to add to it. So what I've got is let's see, we're going to start with fish sauce. I've got a tablespoon of fish sauce that we're going to add to that. And be careful because that's really one of the things that's very high in acid that's going to help to break it down. And you don't want to add too much of that. It's also kind of salty. It's by itself, I personally think it's kind of nasty, but we've used it before in pad thai and now this, but it brings a really solid quality to the Asian cuisine. I have about a tablespoon of chipotle chili powder. And you can use, I couldn't get my hands on Korean chili powder, so that's why I wanted to go with this, because this brings a little bit of heat as well, and I'm a big fan of chipotles. So we'll add that. I've got about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic cloves, and it's got a little bit of oil in there, and that's fine. We've got some green onions. I'm going to add probably about 2 tablespoons of green onion as well. Fresh ginger, about a teaspoon of fresh ginger. And sugar. I've got about 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to add that. And that's also going to help with the breaking down of the acids in that lettuce and making it really soft. Now, some people say like eggplant, you want to salt it first and cure it before you actually make it, into kimchi. But I disagree with that because Napa cabbage isn't really that bitter, and that's the reason why you would normally salt it ahead. So if you see some recipes out there that'll say to salt it ahead and press all the water out of it, Napa cabbage by nature really isn't too bitter, so I don't find the need to have to do that. Now I'm going to add some of our edge. And you want to be careful because like I said about that fish sauce, it's really salty. So I'm just going to add maybe about a half of a teaspoon of edge to that. And then we're going to go ahead and mix it up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just set it aside and let it kind of do its thing.
So the music you are listening to today is by our friends in the Venetia Fair. The song title is A Lady and a Tramp, and it's off of their EP, The Pits.
All right, so we're going to start with our beef, and we have about a pound of flank steak sliced on the bias, and it's also cut against the grain. And I think I did this in a prior episode where I've got the beef cut into strips, and I basically laid it out and I sliced it against the grain on a sharp angle. And the reason why I do that is when we cook it, it's going to stay nice and tender. The marinade itself is going to act as a very good tenderizing agent, but it's always good to cut meat against the grain the correct way, so that way it's easier on the bite when you eat it. So I've got just over a pound here. I mean, a pound will be sufficient. But then with the marinade now, we're going to start with 5 tablespoons of soy sauce, good quality soy sauce. You don't want to buy anything that's garbage. I've got about 2 tablespoons of sugar, granulated sugar, and I know right away you're thinking, hey, that sounds a lot like a teriyaki sauce. And it is. I mean, in the beginning stages of it, it definitely is. But we're going to add, I'm just kind of stirring that sugar up a little bit, so that way we can get it dissolved in that soy sauce. And it is pretty much a foundation of a teriyaki, but we're going to add a few other things to it that's going to really kind of separate it. So we've got some green onions here. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of green onions right to that marinade as well. And here's where it gets cool. We're going to add about a tablespoon of garlic, minced garlic. Then we're going to add probably about a teaspoon of fresh ginger, fresh minced ginger. Then I've got some sesame oil, and this is a good quality, this is a roasted sesame oil. You can find it in any Asian aisle in the supermarket. You can find it in a lot of the stir-fry areas. I recommend having it on hand. It comes in handy. It's really, really tasty. We've got 2 tablespoons of that we're gonna add right into that marinade as well. And I'm gonna add about 1.5 tablespoons of sesame seeds to the marinade as well. And I'll tell you why I like to do that. We're gonna mix this up. The reason why I like to do that is because when we're sauteing the meat, we're gonna actually pan-sear the meat. I've got a pan preheating, a little skillet. The sesame seeds stick to the meat and they toast up in the pan when you saute them, so it adds another layer of flavor to it, which is really good. It adds a nice nutty flavor. So let's add the rest of the meat to this, and let's give it a good toss in that marinade and let it sit. Now the greatest thing about this is to let it sit for at least a half an hour. And what we want to do is we want to get all the sides of the surface area of the meat, all the sides covered in that marinade, so that way there, it gives it the best opportunity of flavor to kind of get in there. You know what I didn't add either is I didn't add any of the edge. So let's add a little bit of the edge too. But you got to be careful, again, with the salt content, because you've added, the soy is very high in salt, so you want to be very careful. I just kind of dusted it, so it's maybe 1/2 teaspoon tops. And we're just going to set this aside and let it go for about 30 minutes, but I wouldn't do it overnight. And the reason why I wouldn't do it overnight is because there's so much acid in this bowl that you'll come back the next day and the meat will be all brown. That means it's fully cooked. The acid's actually cooked right through the whole thing. So I've actually got some marinated meat here, already marinating, and you can see that it's already, and this is only half an hour to an hour old, and it's already starting to turn brown. So that's why you don't want to let it go overnight. You kind of want to keep it, you know, that half-hour range, half hour to an hour would be perfect. So we've got our pan preheated. And there's so much flavor, the aroma's coming out of this, holy smokes. We're gonna just hit this with a little bit of that sesame oil. And the thing about sesame oil, and I think I've talked about this in the past, is it's got a very low tolerance for heat. In other words, it'll burn quickly, so you don't wanna let it sit there and smoke. It's got a very low smoke point. So in other words, it'll start to burn quickly. And you wanna keep that from happening by adding our meat right to it. And because we sliced it really thin, it's going to cook right up. It's going to take minutes to cook. Don't overcrowd the pan. Just kind of spread them out. Oh, the smell. Oh, it smells like roasted nuts in here. All right, so we're just going to sear each side. Let that go for just a minute, and then flip them over. And it's okay if you have it, you know, you can cook it to your desired temperature. If it's a little pink inside, if you like it that way, that's great. Another method that you can use too, that I'm not sure if I talked about yet either, and I think I did when we first started, is to grill them. If you want to take them and heat up your grill outside, if you've got a charcoal grill or you've got a gas grill, just be careful that you don't obviously drop the strips through the fire, through the grates into the fire, but just lay them right across there and they'll cook right up. And then you've got yourself a traditional barbecue. But this works just great. And one of the things I said off camera to our live audience is it makes a great salad topper to go on top of greens. All right, so now I'm gonna take one out and just kind of give it a test. Just wanna see how done it is. Let's just pull it apart. And look at how tender that is. Oh yeah, that's all done. So we're gonna pull this right out. Even if you cook it all the way through and it's brown, it's still gonna be tender. It's not gonna be tough at all. So as we get ready to plate up, we're gonna come to our salad here and check this out. While it's sat, all of the ingredients that we added are already starting to break that cabbage down and it's already forming a dressing. So like I was saying earlier, by putting that in a Ziploc bag, it's gonna get real tender and just break right down. That's the proof right there. So let's go ahead and plate that up. I'm gonna take this now and I'm gonna set up a little bit of salad in the bowl. All those flavors are in there and oh man, it smells incredible. So give like a salad portion. You got enough for about 3 or 4 people here. So then now we come to our beef. And we want to layer and shingle the beef. Again, cook it to however you want. Some of this is still a little bit pink. Some people really like it that way. But you can give, 4, 5, or 6 slices. Oh, look at the toasted sesame seeds on there. Oh man. There we go. And now we've got a little bit of an onion garnish. Just add a little depth and color to the plate. And there we have it. That is our Korean Bulgogi barbecue. Now let's get into the wine. So the wine that we paired with today's meal is a Terima Monastrell. It's a 2010 Spanish wine, and we actually chose the wine first and decided to pair it with, we decided to build the food around it. And it worked out perfectly because it's got a nice, bold flavor. Red wine goes great with steak anyway, but we found that it had a nice balance with all the acids that we added to this. It cut right through it. So we wanted to say thank you very much for joining us in our magic, our madness, and our mayhem. We'll see you next time.